What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Brian Horning, your go-to expert for all things cybersecurity. Today we're diving into a comprehensive guide on cybersecurity, everything you need to know about cybersecurity. We're going to cover everything from basic practices to advanced measures. I'm doing this video because I got a lot of questions on like, Brian, what is cybersecurity? Or I talk to people and I hear what they think cybersecurity is, and there's a lot of misconceptions about cybersecurity. And I want to kind of dispel them in this video and make it a really easy to understand and easy to consume topic so you understand what's involved around cybersecurity. But remember, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have questions, love to hear from you in the comments below. So as I go through my video today and talk about various things, if you're not sure, if I'm not clear on something, now's the time. This is the video to drop it down in the comment section and ask questions. Let's get into the video. So I guess it would be a bad idea if I didn't start the video and just define cybersecurity. What is cybersecurity? So cybersecurity refers to the practices and technologies designed to protect computers, networks, programs, and mainly data from unauthorized access and attacks and damage by cybercriminals or other nefarious individuals out there who want to wreak harm on individuals and businesses. At the end of the day, we're really protecting data because that's really what these cyber criminals are after. They want things like personal information, personal healthcare information. They've figured out ways to monetize this data in ways that extorts people, that uses their good information for their ill-gotten gains. Things like identity theft, stealing people's credit when they have good credit scores. They've worked hard to build up their credit, and these guys come along because they found a social security number, they bought it from another hack on a dark web, and now they're using that to basically rip off other companies using your good name and your good credit information. It encompasses everything from network security to data encryption to incident response when you do have a problem, and risk management. There's all these things that go into cybersecurity and what businesses need to consider in order to keep everybody's data safe that they are entrusted with. Just got off a call with a business owner, and one of the questions I asked them, because they were looking to replace their IT company because they weren't happy with them, and I said, how important is cybersecurity to you? And he said, well, I've been in business for 50 years and I haven't been hacked yet. Well, the threat hasn't existed for 50 years, number one, and he stated the obvious when he said it. But at the end of the day, he did give me the impression that he feels like, you know, he knows he needs to do it, but does he really need to do it that urgently to where he needs to do it right now or spend a bunch of money right now? He wasn't so convinced that this was that much of a problem out there that his business needed to do anything about it. But let's look at what's going on out there. Let's pull back from the lens a little bit and look at it from like a 50,000 foot view, because in today's day and age, cybersecurity is essential. Every business is entrusted and has information that cyber criminals not only want, but then can do things with after they have it, meaning they can spread it all over the internet. They can damage your clients and customers' reputations. It's not good what's going on out there and what your customers have to deal with when you don't protect their data correctly. Cybercrime costs are projected to reach $10.5 trillion annually by 2025, and that's just based on current trends and trajectories that we can predict based on what we're seeing. But unfortunately, these last several months here in 2024 have not gone well for businesses, and cyber criminals have done a lot of damage. And that $10.5 trillion number that's projected, that could triple easily in my mind to $30 trillion by next year if we keep going on the way it's been going the last several months. Hopefully things slow down and cool off, but when you have multiple organizations being hit and the cost being estimated by the insurance companies to be in the billions of dollars on each of these events, that number gets up there pretty quickly. So that number is up from $3 trillion from 2015 to just 10 years ago. So we basically, 4x'd where we were at in 2015. These high profile attacks that are happening all over the place, from Ascension Healthcare to United Healthcare to CDK Global to Patelco credit unions, banks, car dealerships, all these entities being affected. And then you have something like CrowdStrike that happens, taking down a lot of businesses. There's a lot at stake here, and we can see how vulnerable critical things are. This is why we need robust cybersecurity practices and measures, and not just relying on one tool and calling that our cybersecurity practices and relying on one tool like CrowdStrike. Let's get into some common cyber threats in this next section. So what are some common cyber threats, right? I think everybody knows the most sensational one out there, known as ransomware. Ransomware is a type of malware, and these threats come in various forms, including malware, viruses, and ransomware that cripple systems. Phishing attacks deceive users into revealing sensitive information. That's a threat against humans and the human component of what happens in your business and within your computing system. Man-in-the-middle attacks are something where a attacker can get himself in between your computer and another piece of technology, or your server and another piece of technology, and can intercept that traffic. And they can either steal it, spy on you, or they can alter that information and do things like lateral movement on networks, which means they go from one computer to another. And they can also do things like denial of service attacks that overwhelm network devices and make it really hard for computers to communicate with one another, a la meaning people cannot get work done. And an often overlooked threat in the cyber world that we need to deal with are insider threats that involve employees or associates that are involved with the company who have access to critical data, and how they can either knowingly or unknowingly become a part of the exploit that a person uses, or they themselves decide that they're going to do something adverse against a network that they have access to. So these are all things that need to be considered as threats when we talk about cybersecurity. It's not just cyber criminals. There are many other components that a cyber defender needs to think about when it comes to cyber threats. You know, one of the two biggest hacks that I can think of in recent memory that involved threats were cyber criminals taking advantage of Colonial Pipeline and the fact that they had expired employee credentials that were out there, meaning the employee no longer worked at the company, but they were still able to use these credentials to hack the company and deploy ransomware. Or how about that 2020 SolarWinds breach where hackers infiltrated numerous government agencies because of a backdoor that was built into that software? These incidents underscore the diverse and serious nature of cyber criminals and their ability to stop at no end to think of ways to get into companies and exploit them and carry out their mission, whether that be to steal information or do things like deploy ransomware. So those are some of the high-level threats that I talk about when I talk about cybersecurity and why cybersecurity is important and what you need to know. Let's talk about basic cybersecurity practices and how you can combat against these threats. Well, one of the biggest problems I see most humans have when it comes to their information being hacked, stolen, their social media accounts being overtaken, their emails being logged into and being used for nefarious purposes, it all goes back to one problem, is that you guys don't do a very good job at your passwords. You continue to do the same things that we as cyber defenders tell you not to do, and you continue to do them thinking that I'm never going to get hacked, it's never going to happen to me. But strong passwords are your first defense against these cyber criminals. 81% of breaches involve a weak or stolen password in some way, shape, or form. So use password managers. They help you generate and store complex passwords, and make sure you enable multi-factor authentication on everything that you use, because even a hacker can get lucky and guess your really strong long password using some kind of brute force attack mechanism. And even if they do break in, at least you have another mechanism that will stop them if you use an app-based multi-factor authentication like I recommend. Don't use SMS because that can be tricked these days. Stick with app-based or use a key fob or some kind of key token. Those are the most secure in today's environment. Another thing that you can do to keep hackers out of your systems is making sure that your software is regularly up to date. Best thing that you can do is check and make sure that your Windows and your Mac operating systems, or Linux if you use those, are constantly updated. I would recommend even turning on auto updates in a lot of cases, because that's better than turning it off, even though you're probably sitting here going, oh, but auto updates is what caused CrowdStrike and and Windows rolls out updates all the time that break computers. Yes, that is a definite scenario that we need to deal with and overcome, but it's a lot better to be getting these updates when they come out because of things like 0 days than to not update your computer and then remember to do it or do it manually because you're afraid that something might break. Well, I can tell you have a higher chance of getting hit with a 0 day because there's more 0 days that come out that on a daily basis than these issues that we see with certain software products and Windows operating systems that tend to break every so often when updates come out. It's just what we have to deal with right now. We will get better around this stuff, and hopefully we won't have legitimate software programs breaking systems in the future, but it is a small price that we have to pay right now to combat these threats that we have to deal with on a daily basis. Patch management can really do a great job of preventing things like 0 day attacks, and even if some phishing emails get through that you might click on, if you're patched, there's a good chance that whatever that hacker sent you that you clicked on might not work because the 0 day has been removed when you patch your systems. And remember to patch your third-party applications like Adobe and QuickBooks and all those little software programs you run inside your operating system. They need to be updated too. So make sure you're checking. Usually somewhere under help you can find updates or some information about updates somewhere in the menu. I'm going to be manually checking that every so often just to make sure everything's running as intended and those updates aren't stuck or broken or anything like that. But again, auto updates, manually check maybe once a month or periodically. Another thing you can do, and if you work from home, this is important because you're kind of in charge of your network security unless your company provides you with some kind of device or some way to segregate the work computer from the rest of the network. You got a lot of devices going on in your home network, but this part is mainly for businesses, but think about this if you work from home too, because this kind of applies to you. But a secure network is essential these days, especially with remote work, right? Using something like a VPN, or what I recommend is something called a SASE, it's S-A-S-E, to protect your internet connection and ensure that your home and business networks are secure. The FBI has reported a 300% increase in cybercrime since the start of the COVID pandemic, and much of it does target remote workers because they know that companies kind of have a half-baked cybersecurity strategy around remote work right now, even still in 2024. And a lot of companies haven't done everything that they really should do to make sure that the home network doesn't become the source of some kind of an attack. And this last one I'm going to throw at you, probably the obvious one, but it's the one that saves your bacon almost every time, and that's backing up your data. Regular data backups are critical. They're going to be the thing that might allow you to not pay the ransom if you're ever facing ransomware. I recommend that you back up your data to the cloud these days, or to some kind of offline storage that you're really good at handling and controlling. Otherwise, kind of offload that to a cloud provider who provides those kind of backup services, so you don't have to worry about all the ins and outs of physical security and making sure that things are locked up and fireproofed and all the things that you got to consider when you're storing and handling data, so it is available to you when you need it. And a lot of these things come into play sometimes and people don't think them through, and they're thinking like, oh, I can do this on my own. I don't need to pay a cloud provider to have my data backed up in their cloud. I'll just put it on my hard drives and take them home. Yeah, until you get into a car accident or your house catches on fire and you no longer have that stuff anymore and it's not a secure place, or your house gets robbed and those backups get stolen from your house. A study by University of Texas found that 94% of companies that suffer a catastrophic data loss do not survive. Only 6% of companies survive if they have a massive data loss. So having reliable and good backups is important, not only to recover from ransomware, but to recover from anything that your business might suffer. That's why you need to not only do them, but have a process around testing them regularly to make sure they work when you need them. So those are the basics that I would say most people and businesses should be aware of. In this section, I'm going to get a little bit deeper and talk about some of the more advanced cybersecurity measures that businesses really, in my mind, should have now, but you really need to consider these if you're not doing them. And that's firewalls and advanced security software on your computers, right? So because of remote work, everybody should have firewalls, not only on their network. We do still see companies who we go in and we assess their cybersecurity posture texture and we see that they're running their cable modem or their internet modem from their ISP, and that's their gateway to the network, so to speak, right? They have no security device in place other than that modem. Hey, if that's what you want to run with, I know a lot of people are comfortable with the firewalls in those devices, assuming that they're turned on by default, but there's really nobody managing those. There's nobody looking after those. There's nobody telling you whether something's getting through or not, or what's getting through or not, or something bad is getting through that device. So I wouldn't recommend. Most businesses and most people working at home should have some kind of firewall device that they bought at the store that has security features built in. There's Soho routers that home users can buy that are very good, that basically block off anybody getting in from the outside by default. These are things that you want to consider having in place, and businesses want to consider definitely having firewalls on their own network, but also creating policies, making their home workers have these things in place, because hackers are trying to hack into devices that are exposed to the internet from inside of people's homes. Sometimes people don't even know that they expose these things to the internet, and hackers can get to these devices and do bad things to the network once they're inside. Really good security practice that I recommend that all people put in place is encryption. You should be encrypting everything that you can basically put data on today, because at any point in time, a cyber criminal can take a device and remove the storage or remove the memory from it and steal the information that's in it by connecting it to certain tools and devices that we have to read these components and these pieces of hardware. So really nothing inside your computer, nothing inside your phone is safe from a data standpoint. That's why when you set up your phone, when you turn on your computer, one of the first things you want to do is enable this thing called encryption. And that just allows the device to run in a way where it works normally to you. But if you ever lost that device, or you drop it, or it gets thrown out and you forgot to wipe it, we've seen that happen before where nobody reset the computer and all this data gets thrown in the trash, and then somebody comes along and rips the hard drive out. And this can happen when your stuff gets stolen too. They rip the hard drive out, they rip the memory out, and they start reading the information that's in there. And you could have things like tax returns, you could have all kinds of personal information, company information on this device that this cyber criminal or this scammer hacker is now getting his hands on. So it's important that you think about turning on encryption. People think that encryption slows down devices. That's an old tale, and that is no longer true. You will not see or notice any speed or any decrease in your computing experience by turning encryption on your devices. And finally, mainly for businesses, incident response plans. It's critical that companies understand that something is going to happen. It's not if, but when. And when comes, you should have a plan in place and know what to do. This goes true with anything. If you're a family, a head of household, or a parent, or somebody, you should also have an incident response plan for your home too. I mean, that goes along with fires and what happens if a certain part of the house catches on fire. Hopefully you're having those conversations with your children so they don't panic and they know what to do when certain parts of the house are not accessible, or you can't get out the front door. What are you supposed to do, right? These are plans that you should have in place ahead of time. Incident response plans. What happens if you get hacked? What happens if you get an email or a request to move money? These are all things that would be considered incident responses, right? Because if you get an email that says, hey, I need you to change my bank account information for my payroll, and you think that's a legitimate employee and you start responding to that, you could be in a lot of trouble in a very short period of time. So somebody should know what to do with that email when they receive it. Who do they send it to? Who do they get an approval from? And that should all be talked about in advance. You should not be figuring this stuff out when you get those messages. That's just a little insight on like what an incident response plan could be, and a little tidbit piece of an incident response plan. Businesses should have full-blown incident response plans where they have covered pretty much everything in their business that they need to consider that's critical, and have a way to keep running no matter what happens to them. So that's what an incident response plan will help you get to, which is being cyber resilient. So incident response plans are critically important for businesses, but unfortunately not many businesses have them or practice them and work on them on a regular basis. Let's move on to our next section of cybersecurity risk assessments. Risk assessments identify vulnerabilities and potential threats, right? They let businesses know what they have in their network that a cyber criminal could potentially potentially exploit or take advantage of. And it also gives them an idea of what their actual threat landscape is, both with the issues in their business that exist and just in general at a high level, who's targeting your industry, who's targeting your type of business, and what are they doing? How are they trying to get in? Are they sending a certain phishing email? Are they attacking a certain way? Are they going after a certain program that you use in your business? These are all things that a good cybersecurity company will figure out for your business and give you a report on. And these are things that we're seeing companies do not only annually, which has kind of been the standard. Companies are starting to be required to do this on a quarterly basis. And I think that all companies need to get to a point where they are doing risk assessments on a regular basis, like quarterly. Risk assessment is really the only tool that can truly help a business owner sleep better at night. It provides a thorough evaluation of your security posture, and it gives you actionable steps to improve it. If you're interested, we do those. You can check out links in the description down below, but get your business a risk assessment. It's the smartest thing you can do from a cybersecurity standpoint. Next thing all businesses should be doing is training their employees, training them on what are the threats to the business, how might they see things like phishing emails, voicemails, text messages, phone calls that might come in from hackers pretending to be from IT support, pretending to be from another vendor that they work with. These are all things that you should be training your employees on, what to look out for and what to do if they see these types of things. Security awareness training programs educate employees on best practices and how to recognize threats, and studies show that 90% of cyber attacks are due to human error. So if you can shore this up, you really reduce your chances of a cyber attack. Next thing businesses can do is access controls. Don't give everybody access to everything. Implementing a principle of least privilege ensures that employees only have access to the data and systems that are necessary for their job. You need to regularly review and update access controls to prevent unauthorized access. There's a lot of different reasons for this. One is, yes, you can be hacked and you don't want cyber criminals having access to everything. The other part of it is privacy. Not all employees need to see everything, especially if they don't work for that client or that account. And that is a privacy issue for that client if you allow everybody to have access to everything. And we see that a lot in businesses. They just have a place, a drive, a system where everybody just accesses it, everything's in there, and there's no thought to segregating that information from anybody. That's something businesses really can get better at, do a better job at, and it'll help not only with privacy, but as I mentioned, with cybersecurity as well. And the final thing that businesses need to worry about when it comes to cybersecurity is compliance and regulations. Now, this doesn't apply to all businesses, but a lot of businesses out there have to deal with this thing called compliance. And compliance is simply just something that you have to do that somebody else tells you you have to do. Cybersecurity is not the only thing that companies have to comply with. Depending on what industry you're in, you have a lot of compliance or you might have a little, but I can tell you this, most states have data breach laws that you have to follow. And if you have cyber insurance, you have compliance. There are things that you must do to satisfy that cyber insurance policy or they will not pay your claim. You also have compliance with regulations like GDPR, CCPA, and HIPAA. It's not just about avoiding fines, it's about protecting sensitive information. But a lot of people just look at it as like, oh, we have to do this, that, and this, and kind of check the box for these HIPAA requirements, not understanding that they're really supposed to be protecting the health information of their patients, not just checking boxes, but it's kind of where the world's at right now. Non-compliance can result in severe penalties and damage to your reputation for sure. So if you're in a regulated industry, you want to make sure you're doing all the right things. But not only that, if you don't know if you're in a regulated industry, you might want to contact a company like ours who can do a little bit of governance checking for you to let you know if you have any regulations, because there's a lot out there. You might want to check into things like FTC safeguards and other regulations that exist on businesses that you may not know that you have on your business. I have a video on FTC safeguards you can check out on the channel. Let's move on to this final section, which is the future of cybersecurity. Talk about emerging threats, some technological advancements, and kind of the importance of staying ahead of this stuff and not being behind the curve, because there's some interesting data around staying ahead of cyber criminals. Cyber threats are constantly evolving. The emerging threats like AI-powered cyber attacks and deepfakes are presenting new challenges for business leaders, because a lot of these new things cannot be stopped by technology. It requires you, like I said, training your employees that these things are happening out there, that CEOs' voices are being faked by cyber criminals and phone calls are being made into companies pretending to be CEOs and tricking employees, and it's really hard for employees to discern this stuff. So understanding how a CEO might communicate with an employee is important. You know, would he ever call you? Would he ever talk to you in this manner? Set up policies and procedures so people understand what to expect, and it makes it easier for them to say to themselves, this doesn't seem right to me. I probably need to call somebody and let them know I just received a phone call like this, or an email like this, or a text message. So these advancements in AI and machine learning not only enhancing cyber criminals' abilities, but they're also enhancing cybersecurity companies' capabilities. These technologies now can detect anomalies and predict threats where we needed human beings to interpret this information before, which means we're able to analyze a lot more and figure out things much quicker, which is really helping cyber defenders beat these cyber criminals. While quantum computing is still in its infancy, there's promises to revolutionize things like encryption and data security, all things that we know our cyber criminals are working hard to break today's technologies. We're looking for things like quantum computing to lead us to a place where it makes it really difficult for not only humans but computers to crack these security technologies. But cybersecurity is not a one-time effort. It's not something you buy and high-five your colleagues and say, we're good. It's continuous learning. It's adapting. It's understanding what the new threats are and figuring out how to combat those threats. Understanding this stuff is essential in my opinion. You need to follow reputable sources. There's great resources on YouTube like this channel. Hopefully you subscribed, and take courses. Learn from people like me. Understand that cyber criminals are here to stay, and they're working hard to not only bring your companies down, but bring you down as an individual. Ultimately, the individuals are the ultimate victim for a cyber criminal from all the information that I have in front of me today. That might change one day where they figure out how to do more damage to businesses, but really, if you look at what's going on out there, individuals are the ultimate victim of cyber crime because it's their health information, it's their private information that these cyber criminals are really after and what they're selling out on the dark web to other criminals. So to recap, cybersecurity, it involves protecting your data and systems from a wide range of threats, from basic practices like I mentioned, strong passwords and doing regular updates to your systems, to advanced measures like encryption and incident response plans. Every step is critical. One thing isn't more important than the other, and one thing won't make you more protected than the other. I know a lot of companies out there that invested in something like CrowdStrike, EDR. We had 8.5 million computers go down last week because a lot of companies invested in that. But I know a lot of companies of those 8.5 million only invested in that tool. They don't have things like incident response plans. They don't have things like security awareness training programs, or at least good ones that train their employees on a regular basis. We see this all the time in companies where they do one thing and they're missing 8 other things over here that they need to do in order to stop these cyber criminals. And cyber criminals know this. They know that if they hit one tripwire, there's a good chance they're probably not going to find too many more. And that's the state of where we're at with cybersecurity today, but we can change it. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. For more cybersecurity updates and tips and insights, hit that notification bell if you want to be notified when we put out more videos like this. Feel free to leave your questions and comments down below. Let me know what topics you'd like to hear me discuss on this channel. I appreciate the support. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next video.